Me Kimba, host of Radio Broadcast, and I have a requestion for you. I'm actually turning one around that I'm asked all the time, most recently on my colleague Brian Wright's podcast, Mental Reps, and it went something like this.
Okay, I have to mention something
Yeah.
because normally one of the things that I ask my guests is, what's the craziest Hollywood moment that you've had? And I'm sure that you've had more than this, but I feel like I'm going to go out on the limb and say that yours would be when you made out with Steven Tyler
I
of
wouldn't call it
Aerosmith.
I wouldn't call it making out, but thank you for saying that. Certainly, while for me, the dream, the famous, the most Hollywood moment, the craziest moment was meeting Steven Tyler. And I addressed that and in quite the detail in my radio broadcast episodes 9 and 10. But I'm often asked that question, however it's put: who is the most famous person you've ever met? What's your famous Hollywood story? And that's very subjective. So I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of famous people. Sometimes I just met them and never interviewed them. Sometimes I interviewed them in person. Sometimes I met them over the phone and interviewed them. So there's all sorts of interactions that have gone on. But my question comes in right about now. Who do you think is the most famous person I've met? I haven't put every single person here that I've ever met. I tried to think of who might be the biggest name worldwide, and I've narrowed it down to 4 people in 2 different categories. And I am very curious to find out who you think is the most famous. And you'll hear either from them or about them in my next podcast. First up, we have the music category. Who do you think is the most famous of these 4? Barbara Streisand, Paul McCartney, B.B. King, Prince. And then we'll move on to the actor celebrity category. Of these 4, who do you think is the most famous? Jane Fonda, Jack Hanna, Henry Winkler, Sybil Shepherd. What I will do is I will take the top 2 votes from each category. I'll either play the interview or tell you the story of how I met them. You decide who they are and what will be in the next episode of Me Kimba Radio Broadcast. Thanks for your vote, and thanks for being one of Kimba's herd.